Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We are excited to launch our new platform. And so these webinars are about reassuring you that we want to do the best for you, your schools and your pupils as we transition to that new platform for the common pre-tests. Over 40 schools across 4 continents and over 1,600 children have piloted these new tests. And a huge thanks to any of you that are online today that supported us with that pilot. We couldn't have done it without you. We know that there might be some uncertainty as the test and the platform is new, and we'll be providing you with a range of communications and tools, of which this webinar is one, to ensure that you can prepare your children for transition with just as much confidence in the test and with far less administrative burden. Preparation you've undertaken on any platform is absolutely valid, and we'll be sending a range of information, resources, tools out to make sure your children are ready, and that as prep schools, you remain the experts in school transition. There are lots of comms that have been coming this week. There are more coming out next week. And those include a parent guide, how ISEB is going to support prep schools with a notification for parents that you can share with your Year 6 parents at the start of the new term, and an outline of what parents need to do and where to go for support, so we can put you back in control of that process. We know some of you have been asking about levels of questions, and in further reassurance, anyone piloting will have had access to a full range of question types. To pilot authentically, we need to test questions of every type and difficulty. So for those of you that notice some really tricky questions, that will have been to ensure that we can analyse the performance and validity of a wide range of question styles before that final item bank is constructed for you at the right level. We're also going to be planning further webinars for prep schools in the autumn before the tests begin to ensure that you and your teams are absolutely aware of where things are, what's going on, what the platform looks like, what to expect, and everything to do with registration and beyond. So please do join us then. We will be sending out those dates very soon for you. So the aim of today is to give you some real insight to share with your teams about how this platform is going to work and what exactly you need to do. We hope you'll see lots of features in there you'll really like. Only one code per child, a more automated process for SEND and better SEND features for all of your pupils. You'll have visibility of everybody that has registered and only one digital centre declaration form. Anna and I started speaking to prep schools last summer to understand your challenges. So we hope you like what you hear today and that you feel reassured. You can put any questions into the chat for us. If you are logged into Google or YouTube, that chat function will be available, and I'll just drop a note in there in a minute so that you know where to type. If you can't see the chat function, it might be that you need to create a login for Google or for YouTube, and that will just access the chat for you. However, if you don't want to get in touch that way, do email us at any point, pretests@iseb.co.uk. We want to hear your feedback. We want to keep making sure we are developing solutions, qualifications, assessments, and support for schools. And so hearing what you have to say, what you'd like to hear and how you're feeling is really important to us. Anna will also be putting up some slides with our email addresses on directly in case you want to get in touch that way. We're really here for you, and we hope this webinar is the first step in developing a fabulous transition system to support schools, pupils and their parents through that journey. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Anna Rushby, our product manager, who is the absolute expert in this platform and these tests. We hope you enjoy today.
Thank you, Julia. Lovely to meet you all. I'm going to spend a little bit of time now explaining some of the processes. Each section has got some further information, so there'll be information around SEND and admin benefits and things like that coming, so you'll be able to see all of the features that we've put into the tests for you. So we'd like to introduce the ISEB admin portals. These have been designed with you in mind. We heard from you last year that one of the biggest issues that you had was a lack of transparency about administering the tests. Because you received information from a range of different senior schools, you often receive this in all sorts of different formats, PDFs, Excel files, Word documents. You had multiple codes coming everywhere. And of course, the test centre declaration forms you used to have to send off after the test. The admin portals are designed to make everything into one place for you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the 3 admin portals that we have and what they're there for. So first of all, we have the Guardian portal. This is for parents and guardians, and this is where they will go to register their child for the common pre-test. Because the parents or the guardians are registering the child, that means there is only one registration record rather than the multiple registration records that we had for children before. Then we have the senior school portal. This is for the senior schools where the test results are sent. So they'll be able to view the pupil records and they'll be able to see the results as they come in. And then we have the Invigilation Centre portal. This is your portal. It's called the Invigilation Centre portal because it's also used by non-school venues such as the British Council offices and state schools who also have pupils attending. So hence it's called Invigilation Centre portal rather than a prep school portal. Here you'll be able to view the pupil records, you'll be able to schedule the tests, and importantly, this is where you'll be able to download the access codes. So you will no longer have to wait for senior schools to send these to you. You will have visibility of these as soon as you've got the pupil records in your systems. Thank you. Next slide. So a little bit about the processes now, and I've split this into 3 sections. So we're starting off with registering, and this really starts with the senior schools. The senior schools have their portal account and they enter their test deadline. Once they have parents who have applied to their school, they will communicate with the parents to let them know that it's time to register for the pre-test in September 22. On receiving this information, the parent will log into the Guardian portal and they will create their account. Now, by creating an account, it means that they can come back and go in and out of the system, so they don't have to do it all in one go. So if they need to go and find other information or they need to check some things before they continue, they'll be able to do that. Here they add in the pupil information. They select the Invigilation Centre where they'd like their child to sit the test. And if they don't know where they'd like their child to sit the test, there's a process for that as well. But in most of your cases, you know that the parents will be selecting you as their Invigilation Centre. And it's here that they'll add any information around SEND or EAL and make requests to senior school for any access arrangements. At the point at which the parent has created their account and added the Invigilation Centre, you will get notification into your portal. You'll be able to see all of those parents that have registered. You'll be able to view the pupil records. You'll be able to view the SEND and EAL status, which is important when I come onto the SEND sections later. And you'll be able to see all of the senior schools to which they've applied. You can then approve, or in some cases, reject any pupils on the system. So therefore, if a parent had mistakenly selected your school and you didn't recognise the name of the parent, perhaps you were one of a number of St George's prep schools and the parent selected the wrong one, then you would be able to reject that pupil and the parent would get notification. So you will just have the information of the parents and the pupils that are sitting the test at your school. Thank you. Next slide. Once the parent has been through their part of the portal and they've added all of the necessary information, they will have an ISEB applicant ID, which they are to send to the senior school. They're able to do this by pressing copy on the screen and it does it automatically, and then they can send it off to the senior schools. We're working with the senior schools about the best way to get this number to them and how it can be integrated with their MIS system. Excuse me one second. Apologies. So the senior school receives the ISEB applicant ID and they upload it into their portal, which they can do individually or in bulk, and then they can view the pupil record. You'll, as I say, be able to see the senior school and you'll be able to see that senior school deadline. So you will have the list of all the different deadlines. Unfortunately, the senior school deadlines are out of our hand. They're something that the senior school sets, and we have a testing window from October to June. But the good thing with the new system is you will now have that. You won't need to find out from the senior school. You won't need to wait for that information. You'll have visibility in your portal. If you've got 20 children registered, for example, you'll see the list of names and you'll see all the different deadlines and be able to pick the best week for you to be able to sit those tests. or day, or however you schedule them. Once you schedule those tests in the week that's best for you or the day that's best for you, that will be visible in the Senior School portal. Thank you. Next slide. Once you've scheduled the test, you will then be able to download the access codes. You'll be able to do this well ahead of the tests, and you'll have these however you want to be able to use them. They will be in an easy to read format so that the pupils will be able to enter the information correctly. But you will know if all your parents have registered, say by the middle of October, and you run the test the first week in November, you know that that information is already there for you. You don't have to worry about requesting it for senior schools for any late entrants. That's just that one code, and you have it in your portal. You can then run the test. Now, instead of the test centre declaration forms that you used to have to do and send off to the different senior schools to let them know which code you'd used, that will no longer be necessary. All you'll need to be able to do is complete an online centre declaration form, and you can do that in 3 ways. The first way is if there were no issues with the test, and you'll be able to just click to say no issues, and that will be applied to the whole cohort. Or if you had an issue with a whole cohort, perhaps a fire alarm had gone off and you wanted to make the senior schools aware, you'd be able to put that message across the whole cohort. Or if you just had a message that you wanted to attach to a particular child's record, perhaps there'd been a medical emergency during the test, like a nosebleed or something, and again, you wanted to inform the senior school that this had happened, you'd be able to add it into their pupil record, and it would be attached there for the senior school to be visible. So no more centre declaration forms to be sent to all of the different senior schools. Now, the senior school can see your scheduled dates of tests, and they'll be able to see the results as the tests are completed. They can then download these results and into a CSV file or view them in their platform. From the Guardian perspective, they will also be able to see the scheduled dates of the tests, and they'll be able to see the tests have been completed, but they won't see the results. Thank you. Next slide. So a little bit more information around SEND. Parents will be completing the SEND status as part of their registration. This is in addition to any information that they already may need to send to the senior school. This is not in lieu of. We are advising parents to find out from the senior schools what documentation it is that the senior schools require before any approval can be made. They will need to upload some kind of evidence, whether that's an educational psychologist report or other assessor, whatever it is that the senior school requires. Once they've done that, they will then be able to complete a free text box, which has just got some basic access arrangements that pupils might have. If it's on their educational psychologist report that they need rest breaks during a test, then that's where they'll be able to enter that information there. And they'll be able to request extra time. And I make that word really important. They'll be able to request extra time. It will always be the senior school's decision as to whether or not that extra time is approved, which is why we recommend they check with the senior school first what documentation it is that they require. So what will happen next? The senior school will then be able to view that in their portal. They'll be able to filter by SEND pupils, and they'll be able to click through the pupils' records to check. If they've got any queries, they can then appeal the SEND status. And that's where we ask the senior schools then to carry out whatever investigations it is that they do, whether it's getting in touch with the parents to ask for further documentation or proof, or whether they want to speak with the current school, you, to see if there's any information you can provide on the child's normal way of working. So what can you do as the current school? We are actually going to be providing SEND guidance specifically for the tests this year, and that will be coming out next week, which will have information for you and the parents in the senior schools about how the tests have been created to be more equitable, and about the processes for applying for extra time. You will be able to view the records of the pupils, and so you will be able to see well in advance of the tests if parents have or haven't requested SEND time. If you have a parent who hasn't requested extra time and you believe they should have, you'll be able to support the parent if necessary with getting that documentation. Likewise, if you can see that a parent has requested SEND status or extra time and you don't think that that's normal way of working, you'll also be able to support the parent. So rather than the current situation of receiving various multiple codes, some of which have extra time and others do not, everything is transparent and in the system. Just very quickly, I wanted to add a couple of features that we have built into the platform for pupils with SEND that are new. We have coloured overlays that pupils can select from. And we also have the ability to increase and decrease font size in the platform. So rather than rely on the zoom function of the whatever internet platform you're using, you'll actually be able to do that within the test. Previously, in the for pupils with extra time, it was an untimed test and you would have to manually time it. That won't happen now. It will automatically be applied at the test, which means that also those pupils with SEND can see the timer countdown, whereas previously they couldn't. However, we have got the ability to be able to, the pupil has the ability to click off the timer if they find it makes them too anxious seeing it count down. Thank you. Next slide. So the tests, they will be delivered on a brand new and much more user-friendly platform. However, the 4 tests will remain the same: English, maths, verbal reasoning and non-verbal reasoning. Any preparation or practice the children have already undertaken will still be relevant. So anything that you've done, all of the tests for the questions for the English and the maths have been written to the same specifications, so national curriculum up to the end of year 5 for maths. And any kind of preparation for verbal reasoning or non-verbal reasoning that you may have done will be relevant because it's all about those reasoning skills, no matter what the question types are. This year, we will also be producing a test framework that will be released in July that will give you a better understanding of the format of the tests and how we have come up with the items to sit in the test, which will give you more support than you've had previously in preparing for the test. The ISEB test walkthrough will replace the familiarisation test, and that will be released later in July. And it's built on feedback from pupils and staff. So we had the original familiarisation test, and it's gone through several iterations, working directly with pupils and schools to find out what it is they want and how we can make that preparation ahead of the test better. It will allow children to navigate the platform, try out the accessibility features, and see the styles of questions for each test. Thank you. Next slide. So what are the benefits of this new portal for you? They have been designed to remove the issue caused by receiving multiple access codes, which was the biggest issue when we spoke to prep schools. You will have greater agency than you have before because everything will be visible in your portal. You'll be able to see all the parents who have registered and those that haven't. So if there are any that are perhaps slower to register or need help, you'll be able to see them and support them. You'll be able to see all the relevant schools that the children have applied to and their test deadlines. You'll be able to view the pupil record, the SEND information, well ahead of scheduling those tests. From the platform, you will be able to schedule the tests at the optimum time that suits your school to meet the test deadlines. You'll be able to view and download the pupil access codes for the test. No more requesting from senior schools. And then obviously completing the centre declaration form online, which means it will be automatically visible to the senior school, so no sending it off by email after the test. Thank you. Next slide. So how will you support your parents? How can you support your parents? Already last week, we created 2 useful documents for parents that were shared on our website and to all parents who've signed up to our mailing list. At the moment, we have about 2,000 parents who are signed up, but that is growing. So this information went directly to them. We do recommend them signing up to the web page where they will be able to find out things like the 2 guides that I'm just about to tell you about. We had the Common Pretest Guide for Parents, which outlines the changes, why we've made them, and how they can be supported through that process. But we've also made a Preparing Your Child for the ISEB Common Pretests. That's because in feedback from you, we know that where previously we'd said very little to parents about how they can prepare, that actually caused a lot of anxiety for parents, and they came to you for support. And often, you wanted to refer back to us and there wasn't anything you could say. Now we've got the Preparing Your Child for the pre-test document. You can see some of the ways in which we've been working with our experts and advisors on ways to prepare that are fun, that are interactive, that are games, that are things that you can do with your child. Some of them are apps they can do by themselves, but the idea is that It's not just putting a child in front of a screen or having to pay a lot of money for a tutor. So as I said, the best thing to do now is encourage parents to visit our webpage for up-to-date news and to sign up to the mailing list. The link for that was sent round in the instructions that you had to join this webinar, so you should have that with you. Over the summer, you can tell them to explore the pre-tests walkthrough and the other support material. And then in September, you'll be able to support parents by keeping track of those who have registered and who haven't in your Invigilation Centre portal. And you'll be able to advise parents of pupils with SEND regarding any documentation and access arrangements. As Julia mentioned at the beginning, we will be running further webinars in September, and we'll be sending the dates out for those shortly, so that you know that if you've got first couple of weeks, you know that there'll be a webinar to support you with any questions that you've got. Thank you. Next slide. So what can you do now? ISEB recommends that you sign up as an Invigilation Centre. We're building the list of Invigilation Centres, and that will appear as a drop-down box that the parents can select from. So we recommend getting yourself signed up for that now. Make sure that when you sign up, you use the exact name of your school as you want to appear. We have been through and we did do some spot checking with capital letters and things like that, but you just might want to just double check that yourself. Things like the postcode, and make sure that the email address is in there correctly so parents and senior schools can contact you if necessary. Also, if you're an all-through school with tests taking place at the senior school and the prep school, we advise that you make it really clear which one is which so that parents know which to select. And finally, to use a generic email address to sign up for your account. 2 reasons for that. Firstly, we will be using that as the login. And obviously, if you use your personal email address, if you were to leave the school or move to a different department, they would have to use your email address to log into the Invigilation Centre portal. And secondly, that's the one that's going to be visible to parents and senior schools. So if they want to get in contact and it's your direct email address rather than a generic one, and say perhaps you're off on annual leave, then that message won't get through. The other thing you can do is sign up to the mailing list to receive up-to-date information, such as letting you know when the information on the website's been updated, letting you know when the guidance is released. All of that thing you can do on the mailing list, which are in the links that we sent you for this webinar. Thank you. Next slide. So that's all from us. You've got our email addresses on the slide now. So you've got Julia's, julia.martin, mine, anna.rushby, or just into the pre-tests at iseb.co.uk. And that's the end. So we'll see if we've got any questions. So if you have any questions, please drop them into the chat and I can pick them up. And I'll give you a couple of minutes. I do know that one of the questions that came in the last couple of times that I'll just cover off is about it being a shared test. The ISEB common pre-tests continue to be a shared test, and we're quite unique in that way. The benefits of having a shared test is that for your pupils, if they're applying to multiple senior schools who all use the ISEB common pre-test, they only need to sit that test once. They haven't got to have lots of time out for different assessments. They haven't got to try and get their head around different formats of the testing. So yes, so the ISEB common pre-test will remain to be a shared test. So I just wanted to cover that off. Just wait to see if there are any other questions. As I say, if this isn't the right forum and you don't want to ask them in here, that's absolutely fine. As I said, you've got our email addresses. So perhaps after this webinar, you can just drop me or Julia or the pre-test inbox your questions and we can answer them for you. One final point, next week, all of the information about next session's pre-tests, so from September onwards, will be updated on the website, but we will be letting everyone know when this information has been updated, and that will be your best source of information next week. Great. Well, it doesn't look like there's any questions, so I'd like to say a very big thank you for attending the webinar, and please stay in touch, and we look forward to speaking with you. Thank you.